Welcome to another anime week here on Toon'd In. I'm your host, Josh the Fox Mills, and as always I review cartoons. No matter how new, no matter how old, no matter the cost. This one's a little interesting on a personal level. This is the first anime my late father got into, and I knew so little about it that I was fascinated by what I have learned in my research. This is a Japanese space epic that predates Gundam. Heck, it predates Star Wars, if you consider when it was made in Japan. Instead of rambling, I'll tell you more after the credits. Stand by for my review of Starblazers. What's the matter with the clothes you're wearing? Can't you tell that it's super cute? The way you're beating up all the bad guys wearing ribbons and a sailor suit. Japan has to offer unique animation. It's going to get reviewed by this fat Caucasian. Those tunes new or old, even if it's trash or gold, it's still anime to me. Space Battleship Yamoto, or Starblazers over here, was made in 1974 and eventually brought over here in 1979. It was an American adaptation of 3 Space Battleship Yamoto series, put together for 3 seasons of Starblazers. As a result, it lasted for 77 episodes, ending in 1984. It was America's first introduction to anime with an overarching plot, and dealt with more mature themes than other shows aimed at the same audience at the time. One could say it starblazed the way for arc-based animes to come across the pond. As with many arc-based shows, I find it difficult to tell you much without spoiling the plot. However, I feel I can tell you the basic idea of each of the 3 story arcs without ruining them for you. All 3 seasons revolve around their own wars and Earth's place among those wars. In the first season, the distant planet Gamelon attacks Earth to capture and colonize it. Humanity is forced underground to avoid the radiation from the bombs of Gamelon. The radiation lingers, and mankind will die within a year if they cannot return to the surface. The planet Eskandar offers its help in the form of 2 devices. The Cosmo DNA, which would dispose of the radiation and restore Earth, and the wave motion engine, which, when built, would allow the user to travel the far distance to Eskandar and retrieve the Cosmo DNA in time. And so the old sunken battleship Yamoto was turned into a spaceship and fitted with the wave motion engine. And with that, our intrepid crew is off to Eskandar. Season 2 takes place 1 year after they return, and mankind is saved. The Comet Empire arrives to conquer and annex the revived Earth. This season revolves around the Earth Defense Force. In the 3rd season, Earth is caught in between the war of 2 factions, rather than being the focus of it this time. During the conflict, a stray missile causes our sun to go all wonky, and the Yamoto is sent out to find a new home for humanity, as the home world and solar system is doomed. There are a few details I didn't go over, like the Yamoto being renamed the Argo when it became a spaceship, or mentioning any of the characters' names, but I was covering the basic plot here. The cast also constantly changed. With the exception of the main character, Derek Wildstar, almost everyone is switched out for someone else. It's almost like it was a military operation or something. A few crew members stick around through all the seasons, but when you have a big cast, it's hard for any of them to stand out in a notable way. The show was censored to fit standards and practices of the time, but less so than earlier anime brought over to the US. It was still a more mature cartoon and managed to keep funerals for fallen comrades and the threat of extinction for the human race. The Japanese idea of the honorable enemy also remained and stood out amongst the Western cartoons of the time. A remake of the first season was released in Japan in 2014 as Space Battleship Yamoto 2199. That's neat, and it looks pretty good to be honest. I could have made some jokes or pad this out further, but I think this time I'll choose to honor this historic cartoon with respect and dignity. it's time for my final thoughts.
What does the fuck say?
I remember Dad had a model of the Argo, and I thought it was both silly and cool at the same time to have a spaceship that looked like a real ship. Knowing the context of the series now, I find it even more awesome than I used to. Don't get me wrong, this series is dated. The animation is a little clunky, by modern standards anyway, and the production value is clearly from the 70s, but it's still good and worth looking at if you're interested in your anime roots, or just old-fashioned space operas. I liked it, and I can recommend it to you without hesitation. Next week, I'm back to the theme months, and we'll begin Detective Month with the Sylvester and Tweety mysteries. Until then, stay tuned.